Kate Morrison stood in the center of the practice room, her heart beating fast. Around her, dozens of alien cadets watched with curious eyes. Some looked friendly. Most did not. The massive space station called Harmony Prime hummed quietly around them, its walls made of smooth metal that seemed to glow with soft blue light. She was 19 years old and very far from home. Earth was just a small dot in space now, millions of miles away. Kate had worked so hard to get here, to the best sonic warfare academy in the galaxy. Her test scores were perfect. Her physical training was complete. But standing here now, she felt very small. The other cadets were nothing like humans. The Resonari towered above everyone else, their bodies looking like living crystal. When they spoke, their voices could break steel. The Vorthak were shorter but much wider, their thick bodies able to make sounds so deep they could shake buildings apart. There were other species too, each with their own special abilities. Kate was the only human in her class. The only human in the entire academy, actually. Commander Zex-9 walked to the front of the room. He was Resonari, nearly 8 feet tall, his crystal skin catching the light. When he moved, tiny musical notes seemed to float in the air around him. His voice, when he spoke, was like a perfect bell. "Today we will demonstrate basic vocal projection," Commander Zex-9 announced. "Each cadet will show their natural sonic abilities. We will start with Cadet Veltar." Veltar stepped forward. He was young for a Resonari, but still much taller than Kate. His crystal body was a bright blue color, and when he opened his mouth, the most beautiful sound came out. It was like a song and a weapon at the same time. The note he sang hit a metal target across the room, and the thick steel plate cracked right down the middle. The other cadets made sounds of approval. Kate felt her stomach drop. Next came a Vorthak named Grok. He was built like a walking boulder with skin that looked like rough stone. When he opened his mouth, no sound came out that Kate could hear, but she felt it in her bones. The deep, low vibration made her teeth hurt. Another metal target simply fell apart, the pieces scattering across the floor. One by one, each alien cadet showed what they could do. Some made sounds that could cut through armor. Others created notes that could confuse electronic systems. A few could make harmonies that seemed to bend light itself. Finally, Commander Zex-9 looked at Kate. "Cadet Morrison, please demonstrate your species' sonic capabilities." Kate walked to the center of the room. Every eye was on her. She could hear some of the cadets whispering to each other in their strange languages. She knew they were talking about her. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times. Kate took a deep breath, opened her mouth, and sang. Her voice was clear and strong. It was a good human voice, the kind that could fill a concert hall back on Earth. But here, in this room full of beings who could shatter mountains with a whisper, it sounded thin and weak. The note hit the metal target and bounced off without leaving a mark. Silence filled the room. Then someone started to laugh. It was a high tinkling sound like breaking glass. A Resonari cadet named Silara was covering her mouth, but the laughter kept coming. Soon others joined in. Commander Zex-9 held up one crystalline hand and the laughter stopped. But Kate could see the amusement in his glowing eyes. "Perhaps," the commander said, his voice carefully polite, "Cadet Morrison would be better suited for support duties. Communications, perhaps, or clerical work." More laughter rippled through the room. Kate felt her face turn red. She wanted to disappear. "That will be enough for today," Commander Zex-9 continued. "Report to your dormitories. Tomorrow we begin advanced frequency manipulation." The cadets began to leave, still talking and laughing among themselves. Kate stood frozen in place until she felt a hand on her shoulder. "Hey," a familiar voice said. "Come on, let's get out of here." Kate turned to see Lisa Park, her roommate. Lisa was human too, but she was here as an engineer, not a warrior. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I'm sorry," Kate whispered as they walked out together. "I tried so hard." "You did fine," Lisa said firmly. "Your voice was beautiful. These aliens just don't understand what humans can do." They walked through the curved hallways of Harmony Prime. Through the windows, Kate could see the stars stretching out in all directions. Earth was somewhere out there, but it felt like another universe. "Maybe Commander Zex-9 is right," Kate said. "Maybe I should request a transfer to communications." "Don't you dare," Lisa stopped walking and grabbed Kate's arm. "You earned your place here. You scored higher on the entrance exams than half these aliens. You can do things they can't even imagine." "Like what?" Kate asked. "Did you see what happened in there?" My voice couldn't even scratch the target. So what? Lisa said. Maybe the test is wrong. Maybe human voices work differently. You come from Earth, Kate, the Deathworld. You think evolution gave you a weak voice by accident. Kate had heard Earth called a Deathworld before. Most aliens thought her home planet was impossibly dangerous. The weather changed too fast. The animals were too violent. The plants were poisonous. The very air could kill you if you weren't careful. But Kate had grown up there. She had survived storms that could level cities. She had learned to live with predators that hunted in packs. She had breathed air that would burn alien lungs. Maybe you're right, Kate said quietly. I know I'm right, Lisa replied. These aliens think they know everything about sonic warfare, but they've never met a human before. They don't know what we're capable of. They reached their dormitory, a small room with 2 beds and a window looking out at the stars. Kate sat on her bed and stared at her hands. Tomorrow will be better, Lisa said. You'll show them what humans can really do. Kate nodded, but she wasn't sure she believed it. The laughter still echoed in her ears. The way Commander Zex-9 had looked at her, like she was a cute pet that had tried to roar. But as she lay in bed that night, looking out at the endless stars, Kate made herself a promise. She would find a way to prove herself. She would show these aliens that humans were more than they seemed. She just had to figure out how. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of Kate's life. Every day brought new training exercises, and every day she fell further behind her alien classmates. The morning sessions focused on frequency control. Commander Zex-9 would project a pure tone, and the cadets had to match it exactly. The Resonari students did this without effort, their crystal bodies naturally creating perfect notes. The Vorthak rumbled out deep sounds that shook the floor. Even the smaller species managed to hit their targets with impressive accuracy. Kate tried her best, but human vocal cords were not built for such precise control. Her notes wavered and cracked. Sometimes she could hit the right frequency, but only for a few seconds before her voice gave out. Focus, Cadet Morrison, Commander Zex-9 would say, his tone growing more impatient each day. Sonic warfare requires absolute precision. Your voice must be a weapon, not a musical instrument. The afternoon sessions were even worse. These involved breaking through harmonic shields, barriers of pure sound that could stop bullets and energy beams. The alien cadets attacked these barriers with focused sonic blasts, each note carefully calculated to find weak points in the defensive harmonies. Kate's human voice simply bounced off the shields like a rubber ball hitting a wall. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't generate the pure, focused energy needed to crack even the weakest barriers. The other cadets stopped laughing at her. Now they just ignored her. To them, she had become invisible, a failed experiment that would soon be transferred to a less demanding program. Only Veltar still paid attention to her, and not in a good way. The young Resonari had appointed himself as Kate's unofficial mentor, though his help felt more like mockery. Here, let me show you again, Veltar would say, his crystalline voice dripping with false kindness. Watch how I focus the energy. See how the frequency remains stable. Perhaps if you practice for several more years, you might achieve basic competency. Kate wanted to punch him, but she knew that would only prove she didn't belong here. One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, Kate sat alone in the Academy's library. The vast room was filled with floating holographic displays showing information from thousands of worlds. Most of it was technical data about sonic warfare techniques used by different species. Lisa found her there, slumped over a table covered with research files. Still trying to learn their way, Lisa asked, sitting down beside her friend. What else can I do? Kate replied. This is how sonic warfare works. Pure tones, focused energy, harmonic precision. If I can't do it their way, I can't do it at all, and says who? Lisa pulled up a new holographic display. Look, I've been doing some research of my own. Did you know that humans are the only species in the galaxy that evolved in an environment with constant acoustic chaos? Kate looked up from her files. What do you mean? Think about Earth, Lisa said, her fingers dancing over the controls. Wind through forests, ocean waves, thunder, animal calls, volcanic eruptions. Our planet is never quiet. Most alien homeworlds are much more stable. Their environments taught them to value pure sounds, clear frequencies. Images filled the air around them. Kate saw recordings from alien worlds. Vast crystal formations that sang in perfect harmony. Oceans that moved in regular patterns. Weather systems that followed predictable rules. But Earth taught us something different, Lisa continued. We learned to use chaos. Look at this. A new file opened showing historical recordings from human conflicts. Kate watched soldiers using war cries that seemed to have effects far beyond their volume. She saw battle songs that somehow coordinated massive armies across impossible distances. Most interesting were the recordings of structural failures that happened when humans sang in groups. Buildings collapsing in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The military scientists never understood it, Lisa explained. They called it psychological warfare, but look at these energy readings. Something else was happening. Kate studied the data. The recording showed acoustic patterns that made no sense. Human voices were creating interference patterns that seemed random, but the results were anything but random. It's like we weaponized noise itself, Kate whispered. Exactly, Lisa said. While other species learn to create perfect sounds, humans learn to create perfect chaos. Maybe that's your advantage. Kate spent the next week studying everything she could find about human vocal capabilities. She learned about throat singing from Mongolia, death metal screaming from Scandinavia, the complex harmony traditions of Africa, and the rhythm techniques developed in urban America. Each human culture had found different ways to use the voice, and none of them focused on the pure tones that alien warfare favored. She began practicing in secret, using a small training room late at night when the other cadets were sleeping. Instead of trying to copy the alien techniques, she experimented with the wild, chaotic sounds that came naturally to humans. She tried metal screaming, pushing her voice to its harsh limits. She practiced operatic techniques that used multiple harmonics at once. She even learned beatboxing, creating complex rhythms and sounds that no alien vocal system could produce. The results were strange. Her voice didn't get stronger in the traditional sense, but it did get more complex. She could layer multiple frequencies together, creating sounds that seemed to contradict the basic rules of acoustics. You sound different, Lisa observed one morning over breakfast. More. I don't know how to describe it. More alive, maybe? Kate nodded. I'm starting to understand something. The aliens think about sound like it's mathematics, pure, clean, predictable, but humans think about sound like it's art, wild, emotional, chaotic. And that matters in warfare how? Lisa asked. I'm not sure yet, Kate admitted, but I think I'm starting to find out. That afternoon's training session focused on disrupting communication arrays. The exercise required cadets to interfere with electronic signals using only their voices. It was an advanced technique that even some of the senior students struggled with. Commander X9 demonstrated first, his crystalline voice producing a perfect sine wave that cleanly cut through the array's frequency band. The communication system shut down immediately, its circuits overwhelmed by the precise sonic attack. The key, he explained, is absolute frequency control. Find the exact frequency the system uses, then overload it with pure energy. Any variation or instability will cause the attack to fail. One by one, the alien cadets attempted the exercise. Most succeeded, though it took them several tries to find the exact frequency needed. When Kate's turn came, she didn't even try to copy their technique. Instead, she opened her mouth and let out a sound that was part scream, part song, and part noise. It was chaotic and wild, incorporating half a dozen different human vocal techniques at once. The communication array didn't just shut down. It sparked, smoked, and then died completely, its circuits fried beyond repair. Commander X9 stared at the destroyed equipment in shock. How did you know the exact frequency? He demanded. I didn't, Kate replied honestly. I just made noise. The commander's crystalline features shifted in confusion. That's impossible. Random noise cannot disrupt a targeted system. But Kate was beginning to suspect that human noise wasn't random at all. It was something else entirely. Something the aliens didn't understand. Something they had never encountered before. That night, she lay in bed thinking about chaos and order, about the difference between human and alien minds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, Kate felt like she might actually belong here. She just had to figure out how to turn human chaos into an alien beatable weapon. 3 weeks into her secret training, Kate felt different. Her voice had changed in ways she couldn't fully explain. When she spoke normally, people seemed to listen more carefully. When she practiced alone, the sounds she made seemed to hang in the air longer than they should. Lisa noticed it too. You're starting to sound scary, she said one morning, but she was smiling when she said it. Kate wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but she was about to find out. The day's exercise was called frequency matching, and it was one of the most basic skills in sonic warfare. Two cadets would face each other across the training room. One would create a defensive sound barrier, and the other would try to break through by matching the exact frequency and overpowering it. It was considered so simple that even first-year cadets rarely failed. The alien students had been doing variations of this exercise since childhood. Their vocal cords were built for precise frequency control. Commander X9 paired the cadets randomly, or so he claimed. But Kate noticed that she was always matched against the strongest opponents. Today, her partner was Veltar. The young Resonari smiled as he took his position across from her. His crystal body caught the light, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the walls. "Don't worry, Kate," he said, his voice musical and condescending. "I'll start with something easy for you." The other cadets gathered around to watch. Kate could see the expectation in their eyes. They were waiting for her to fail again, to prove that humans didn't belong in their elite academy. Veltar raised his hand, and a barrier of pure sound appeared between them. It was visible as a shimmering wall of energy, humming with perfect harmonic precision. The frequency was clear and stable, exactly 440 Hz, the same as an A note on a human piano. Kate was supposed to analyze the frequency, match it exactly, and then overpower Veltar's defense with superior energy. It was a test of vocal strength and control. Instead, she decided to try something else. Kate opened her mouth and screamed. It wasn't like any sound the aliens had heard before. Her voice started low and rough like gravel being ground together. Then it climbed higher, incorporating elements of the death metal techniques she had been practicing. But there was more to it than that. Her scream contained layers. Multiple frequencies wove together in patterns that shouldn't have worked. Harmonics and subharmonics created interference patterns that seemed to pulse and shift. It was chaos given voice, disorder shaped into a weapon. The effect on Veltar's barrier was immediate and shocking. The perfect wall of sound didn't just crack. It collapsed completely, the harmonic structure falling apart like a house made of cards in a hurricane. But more than that, Kate's chaotic frequencies seemed to infect the barrier's remains, turning Veltar's own energy against him. The young Resonari staggered backward, his crystal body flickering between different colors. His natural resonance chambers, the organs that gave his species their sonic abilities, were being disrupted by Kate's wild harmonics. He pressed his hands to his throat, his eyes wide with shock and something that looked like fear. Around the room, electronic equipment began to malfunction. Monitoring devices sparked and smoked. The training room's acoustic dampeners, designed to absorb and neutralize sonic energy, started vibrating in impossible patterns. One of the wall panels cracked from top to bottom. "Stop!" Commander X9 shouted, his crystal voice cutting through Kate's scream like a sword. Kate immediately went silent. The sudden quiet felt strange and heavy. Veltar was still shaking, his hands pressed against his throat. The other cadets stared at Kate with expressions she had never seen before. Not mockery or dismissal, but genuine uncertainty. "What did you do?" Veltar whispered, his perfect voice now rough and unstable. "That wasn't frequency matching. That was something else." Commander X9 strode across the room, his crystalline features sharp with suspicion. "Cadet Morrison, you will submit to an immediate equipment scan. No technological enhancements are permitted in training exercises." Kate stood still while the commander ran a sonic scanner over her entire body. The device hummed and clicked, checking for hidden amplifiers, frequency generators, or any other equipment that might explain what had just happened. The scanner found nothing. Kate was completely natural, exactly what she appeared to be. A 19-year-old human girl with no technological augmentation. "Impossible," Commander X9 muttered. "Chaotic frequencies cannot overcome harmonic barriers. It violates the fundamental principles of sonic warfare." "Maybe the principles are wrong," Kate said quietly, the commander's glowing eyes fixed on her. "Explain." Kate looked around the room at the damaged equipment, at Veltar still recovering from his vocal disruption, at the crack in the wall that her voice had somehow created. "You teach that sonic warfare is about precision," she said. "Pure tones, exact frequencies, perfect control. But what if that's not the only way? There is no other way, Commander Zex9 replied firmly. Acoustic energy follows natural laws. Order defeats chaos. Structure overcomes randomness. On your worlds, maybe, Kate said, but I don't come from your worlds. I come from Earth. She thought about her home planet with its violent storms and chaotic weather. She remembered the sound of wind through forests, never quite the same twice. She thought about human music with its complex rhythms and emotional dissonance. Earth taught us to use chaos, Kate continued. Your species learned to create perfect sounds in perfect environments. Humans learned to make useful noise in a world that was trying to kill us. Noise cannot be weaponized, the commander stated. Can't it? Kate gestured to the broken equipment around them. Then how do you explain what just happened? Commander Zex9 had no answer for that. The evidence was all around them, impossible to deny. A human girl with no special equipment had just done something that shouldn't exist according to everything the Academy taught. We will investigate this incident thoroughly, the commander finally said. Class dismissed. The cadets filed out in unusual silence. Kate noticed that they gave her more space than usual, and some of them kept glancing back at her with uncertain expressions. Veltar was the last to leave. He paused at the door and looked back at Kate. Your voice, he said quietly. It felt wrong. Not painful, but wrong, like it was attacking the harmony of thought itself. After he left, Kate was alone with the broken equipment and the crack in the wall. She had proven something today, but she wasn't sure what. Her voice could do things that alien sonic warfare couldn't explain or counter. But the look in Veltar's eyes had shown her something else. Her new abilities didn't just break barriers. They frightened the aliens in ways she was only beginning to understand. Lisa found her still standing in the damaged training room an hour later. So, Lisa said, looking around at the chaos, how do you feel about not being ignored anymore? Kate considered the question. The other cadets would definitely not ignore her now. But she wasn't sure that was an improvement. Fear and respect looked similar from the outside, but they felt very different to receive. I think, Kate said slowly, I'm starting to understand what it means to be human in a galaxy full of aliens. And what does it mean? Kate looked at the crack her voice had put in the solid wall. It means we don't fight the way they expect. And that scares them. She was right to be concerned. What Kate didn't know was that her demonstration had been recorded by the Academy's monitoring systems. And that recording was already being analyzed by alien scientists who were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated the species from the Deathworld called Earth. The final examination came 2 weeks after Kate's incident with Veltar. During those weeks, the Academy had been strangely quiet. Kate noticed instructors watching her more carefully during training sessions. Equipment failures had become more common, always happening when she pushed her voice to its chaotic limits. Commander Zex9 had stopped calling on her during demonstrations. When she asked Lisa about it, her friend just shrugged. Maybe they're afraid of what you might break next, she said. The examination was announced on a gray morning when the station's artificial weather system was simulating an Earth thunderstorm. Kate found the sound of rain against the windows comforting, a reminder of home. Today you face the trial of echoes, Commander Zex9 announced to the assembled cadets. You will work in teams to infiltrate a heavily defended facility, using only your vocal abilities. No weapons, no equipment, only the power of your voice. Kate felt her stomach tighten. Team exercises had always been her worst nightmare. The other cadets had learned to work together, their voices blending in perfect harmony to achieve complex objectives. Kate's chaotic approach didn't blend with anything. Teams will be assigned randomly, the commander continued, though Kate caught a slight smile on his crystalline features that suggested nothing random about it. When the assignments were announced, Kate's fears were confirmed. She had been placed with the Academy's most obvious failures, the cadets who couldn't meet the basic standards of sonic warfare. Her team consisted of 5 beings, including herself. There was Grok, a massive Vorthak whose deep voice was supposed to shake buildings apart, but who was essentially tone deaf. His subsonic rumbles were powerful but completely unfocused, as likely to bring down their own position as the enemy's. Solara was a Resonari, whose vocal crystals had been damaged in an accident years ago. Instead of pure cutting tones, her voice produced discordant notes that interfered with her own team's efforts. She was brilliant at sonic theory but couldn't put it into practice. The other 2 team members were Clicks, a small reptilian species whose voice was simply too weak for serious combat, and Dorn, whose species communicated primarily through scent rather than sound, making him nearly useless in sonic warfare. Kate looked at her assigned teammates and realized this was meant to be her punishment. Commander Zex-9 had put together a team designed to fail spectacularly, with her as the final insult. "Great," Grok rumbled, his voice making the floor vibrate. "The human who breaks things and 4 other rejects. This should be fun. At least we'll fail together," Solara said, her damaged voice creating strange harmonics that made everyone wince. The facility they had to infiltrate was called the Fortress of Silence. It was a massive structure built specifically to test sonic warfare abilities, with walls that absorbed sound, defensive systems that countered known vocal techniques, and robotic guardians programmed to resist every form of sonic attack in the Academy's database. Teams of elite cadets had trained for months to tackle this challenge. Kate's misfit group had barely an hour to prepare. "Okay," Kate said as they studied the facility blueprints. "What can each of us actually do?" The answer was depressing. Grok could produce tremendous subsonic power, but with no precision. Solara understood complex harmonic theory but couldn't execute it. Clicks could create precise, delicate frequencies that were completely ineffective against serious defenses. Dorn could barely participate at all. "We're doomed," Click squeaked, his voice barely audible. "Maybe not," Kate said slowly. "You're all thinking about this wrong. You're trying to be good at conventional sonic warfare, but what if we don't fight conventionally?" "What do you mean?" Solara asked. "You've all seen what my voice can do," Kate replied. "It breaks the rules. It does things that shouldn't work. Maybe that's exactly what we need." The mission began at dawn. Kate's team approached the Fortress of Silence from the designated starting point, a small hill overlooking the imposing structure. Through her earpiece, she could hear other teams already engaging the outer defenses, their voices creating the precise sonic attacks they had trained for months to perfect. Those attacks were failing. The fortress had been designed by the galaxy's best defensive engineers. Every known sonic warfare technique had been anticipated and countered. Pure tones were absorbed by specialized materials. Harmonic attacks were neutralized by frequency scramblers. Subsonic assaults were dampened by acoustic barriers. Kate watched through her binoculars as team after team of elite cadets was forced to retreat, their conventional approaches proving useless against the fortress's advanced defenses. "Our turn," Grok said grimly. They approached the outer wall, a smooth surface that seemed to swallow sound. Grok tried first, his massive form generating subsonic pulses that should have cracked the foundation. Instead, the sound simply disappeared into the wall's acoustic dampening system. Solara attempted a complex harmonic sequence designed to find weak points in the structure. Her damaged crystals produced the wrong frequencies, and the defensive systems easily countered her efforts. Click's and Dorn's attempts were even less effective. Within minutes, it was clear they were failing just as badly as everyone else. The fortress's automated defenses began to activate, sonic barriers rising to trap them in place while guardian robots moved to intercept. "This is hopeless," Dorn said, his translator struggling to convert his scent language into words. "We should surrender now and minimize the humiliation." "No," Kate said firmly. She looked at her teammates, these broken cadets who had been thrown together as a joke. "We came here to prove ourselves. All of us." She stepped forward, positioning herself between her team and the fortress's defenses. The guardian robots were approaching, their sensors locked onto the failed sonic attacks. Barrier generators hummed to life, preparing to contain them completely. Kate thought about Earth, about storms that came without warning and winds that followed no pattern. She thought about human music with its emotional chaos and deliberate dissonance. She thought about the sound of her own world, wild and untamed and beautiful in its unpredictability. Then she began to sing. It started as a lullaby, something her mother had sung to her as a child. Soft and gentle, the kind of sound that had no place in sonic warfare. But as the melody continued, it began to change. Elements of a war chant crept in, the rhythmic calling that human soldiers had used for thousands of years. Then came the air raid siren, the mechanical wail that warned of incoming danger. But Kate's voice wove all these sounds together into something that was both familiar and alien, chaotic and controlled, soft and terrifying all at once. The effect was immediate and impossible. The fortress's defensive systems, designed to counter every known form of sonic attack, had no idea how to process what they were hearing. Kate's voice didn't follow any of the patterns in their databases, but more than that, her teammates could hear something in Kate's chaotic melody that spoke to their own failures and frustrations. Her voice seemed to be calling to them, inviting them to add their own broken sounds to her impossible song. And as the air itself began to vibrate with frequencies that shouldn't exist, Kate realized that her real test was just beginning. Kate's voice filled the air around the Fortress of Silence, and something impossible began to happen. The sound didn't just travel through the air, it began to change the air itself. The fortress had been built with the most advanced acoustic systems in the galaxy. Every surface was designed to absorb, reflect, or manipulate sound waves in precise ways. But Kate's chaotic frequencies didn't behave like normal sound waves. They seemed to infect the environment, turning the fortress's own defensive systems into amplifiers for her impossible song. The air itself started to vibrate in patterns that violated the basic laws of physics. Kate's voice created standing waves that shouldn't exist, harmonics that fed back on themselves, and frequency combinations that seemed to generate their own energy. In the command center overlooking the exercise, Commander Zex-9 watched his monitoring equipment with growing alarm. The acoustic readings made no sense. Kate's voice was registering on frequencies that her human vocal cords couldn't possibly produce, creating energy patterns that seemed to multiply rather than dissipate. "Sir," one of the technicians said, his voice shaking, "the fortress's defensive grid is beginning to resonate. The entire structure is becoming an amplifier for the humans' vocal patterns." Commander Zex-9 stared at the displays in disbelief. The fortress's walls, floors, and ceiling were all vibrating in sync with Kate's voice, creating a massive acoustic chamber that amplified her chaotic frequencies beyond anything that should be possible. But the real shock came when he looked at the readings from Kate's teammates. Grok, the tone-deaf Vorthak whose subsonic pulses had always been unfocused and wild, was suddenly producing precision sonic attacks. His deep rumbles, which had never been able to hit a target accurately, were now cutting through the fortress's defenses like a laser through paper. The chaotic matrix that Kate's voice had created wasn't hurting the other members of her team. Instead, it was somehow organizing their failures into strengths. Grok's unfocused power was being channeled and directed by the acoustic chaos surrounding them. Silara's damaged vocal crystals, which had produced nothing but discordant noise for years, were now creating the most beautiful and deadly harmonies anyone had ever heard. Her broken voice was working perfectly within Kate's chaotic framework, as if the disorder gave her crystals exactly the kind of interference they needed to function properly. Even Clix and Dorn, whose voices had always been too weak for combat, were contributing to the growing acoustic storm. Their small sounds were being caught up in Kate's vocal matrix and amplified into effective weapons. The fortress's automated defenses tried desperately to counter this new form of attack. AI systems that had been programmed with every known sonic warfare technique analyzed Kate's voice, searching for patterns they could disrupt or frequencies they could cancel. They found nothing they could understand. Kate's voice seemed to exist in a state of organized chaos that their logical algorithms couldn't process. Every time the AI systems thought they had identified a pattern, it would shift into something completely different. The defensive barriers began to fail, not because they were being overpowered, but because they were being confused. The fortress's own acoustic systems were turning against it, infected by the chaotic frequencies that Kate's voice generated. Guardian robots that had been designed to resist sonic attacks began moving erratically, their coordination systems overwhelmed by the impossible harmonics filling the air. Some simply shut down, their processors unable to cope with the data they were receiving. Others began attacking each other, their targeting systems confused by the acoustic chaos. In the monitoring room, alarm bells were ringing. The fortress's main AI, one of the most sophisticated computer systems in the galaxy, was beginning to show signs of critical malfunction. "The primary defense grid is collapsing," a technician reported. "The acoustic interference is spreading through every system in the facility." Commander Zex-9 watched in fascination and horror as Kate's impossible voice continued to grow in power and complexity. The air around the fortress was now visibly vibrating, creating heat shimmer effects that made the entire structure appear to be underwater. But the most terrifying thing was the sound itself. What had started as Kate's strange human song had become something far beyond the range of any single voice. The air itself seemed to be screaming, a cacophony of impossible frequencies that should have torn the fortress apart, but instead held it in a state of controlled chaos. Kate stood in the center of this acoustic storm, her human voice somehow conducting an orchestra of disorder that included her teammates, the fortress's own defensive systems, and the very atmosphere around them. She was no longer just singing. She had become the focal point for a new kind of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. The fortress's final defenses collapsed in a cascade of harmonic failure. Security doors opened randomly, their electronic locks confused by the chaotic frequencies. Barrier generators exploded in showers of sparks. Even the facility's communication systems began broadcasting Kate's voice across multiple frequencies simultaneously, spreading the acoustic infection to other parts of the station. Kate's team walked through the fortress like they owned it, their voices now perfectly coordinated within the chaotic matrix she had created. Objectives that should have taken hours to complete were accomplished in minutes. Security systems that had been considered impregnable simply ceased to function. In the command center, Commander Zex-9 made a decision that went against every principle of the Academy. "Shut down the exercise," he ordered. "Sir?" the technician asked in confusion. "The team hasn't completed all objectives yet." "Shut it down now," the commander repeated, his crystalline voice sharp with urgency. Before that human voice spreads to the station's main systems, the simulation ended abruptly, all holographic enemies and defensive systems powering down at once. But the effect of Kate's voice continued for several more seconds, the air itself taking time to stop screaming. Finally, silence returned to the fortress. Kate stood quietly in the center of her team, her human voice now back to normal speaking levels. Around her, Grok, Silara, Klix, and Dorn looked stunned, as if they couldn't believe what they had just accomplished. "Did we win?" Klix asked in his tiny voice. "We obliterated the course record," Silara said, checking her wrist display. 18 minutes and 37 seconds. The previous best time was 4 hours and 12 minutes. Kate nodded, but didn't seem surprised. She was beginning to understand something about herself and her species that the aliens had never considered. Humans didn't just survive in chaos, they weaponized it. Commander Zex-9 arrived at the fortress within minutes, accompanied by a team of senior instructors and several beings Kate had never seen before. They wore the uniforms of the Galactic Defense Council's Research Division. "Cadet Morrison," the commander said, his voice carefully controlled, "we need to discuss what just happened here." "I used my voice to complete the exercise," Kate replied simply. "You did far more than that," one of the researchers said, studying a tablet full of acoustic readings. "You created frequencies that shouldn't exist, generated energy from nowhere, and somehow coordinated a team acoustic attack using principles that violate everything we know about sonic warfare." Kate looked at the assembled aliens, seeing the mixture of fear and fascination in their eyes. They were beginning to understand what Lisa had told her weeks ago. Humans were different. Not weaker, not lesser, just fundamentally different in ways the galaxy wasn't prepared for. "You want to know how I did it?" Kate said. "Very much," Commander Zex-9 replied. Kate smiled, thinking about her homeworld with its violent storms and chaotic beauty. "I fought like a human," she said. "The rest of you learned to create order in peaceful environments. Humans learned to create useful chaos in a world that was trying to kill us." "Chaos cannot be weaponized," the commander insisted, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "Can it?" Kate gestured to the fortress around them, its systems still recovering from the acoustic infection her voice had spread. "Your fortress was designed to counter every known form of sonic warfare, but it wasn't designed to counter something that doesn't follow any known patterns. What you did," one of the researchers said slowly, "it's like you turned noise into a precision weapon." "Not noise," Kate corrected. "Chaos. There's a difference. Noise is random. Chaos is pattern hiding inside disorder. and humans are very good at finding patterns where others see only confusion. Commander Zex-9 stared at Kate for a long moment, his crystalline features reflecting the light in complex patterns. Finally, he spoke. "Cadet Morrison," he said formally, "I believe we may have underestimated your species' potential for sonic warfare." Kate nodded. "Yes, sir, you did." As the alien instructors led her team away for debriefing, Kate looked back at the fortress one last time. For weeks she had been trying to prove she belonged at this academy, trying to show that humans could fight like aliens. Instead, she had proven something far more important. She had shown the galaxy that humans didn't need to fight like anyone else. They had their own way of waging war, as wild and unpredictable as the Deathworld that had shaped them. And that way was more effective than anything the aliens had ever seen.